talk to your donors today, raise more money tomorrow. So I wanted to get started right away with having you answer a question by typing that in to the questions box. So what is your biggest challenge when it comes to talking to your donors? So what is your biggest challenge? What do you struggle with? What would you like to hear at today's webinar? What would you like to make sure that we address? So what's your biggest challenge when it comes to talking to your donors? And while you're typing that in, just a quick update on who we are. I'm Erica Wasdorp. I'm president of A Direct Solution, and I've been raising money through monthly giving and direct mail annual fund for more than 26 years. I've been doing direct response fundraising, including using telemarketing, for more than 35 years. I moved to this country 26 years ago from the Netherlands. And with me today is Janice Fonger from J. Melito and Associates. And Janice and I have done some work on a couple of clients together. And she's been in the nonprofit sector for also more than 30 plus years. So we have been talking to donors in many, many ways for many, many years. All right, so let me take a look at what some of you have answered here is so Andrew says, what should I say? Becky says, knowing when it's the right time to ask for a gift. Jessica says, I'd love to hear how national organizations, how national nonprofits raise money locally. That's an interesting question. Patricia says, how to initiate conversation. Sarah says, making the time to talk to my donors. I think I should do it every day, but I don't always do it. Getting them to answer the phone and email, says Julia. Ellen says, hi. Hi, Ellen. I'm very excited. For me, it's talking about why they have lapsed if they were consistent donors for years. Betsy says, I'm new in my position. Previous donors were not well stewarded. My challenge is getting them to respond to email. And actually the phone can help you with that. So thanks so much. And again, like this is what we do. Like, please feel free to answer, ask any questions in the question box. So what you're going to learn today is that it is really important to talk with all of your donors. But rather than talking, it's also really important to truly listen. Because if you really listen to your donors, you can understand what motivates them and what may turn them off. So successful fundraising is really a mix of asking and listening. And the best two-way conversations will improve your fundraising results. Absolutely. So I want to start off right with a poll here, asking if you use the phone to communicate with your donors now. Yes, no, not yet, but you're thinking about it. So and you can just click right on the screen answering the poll. So are you using the phone now to talk to your donors? Yes, no, not yet, but you're thinking about it. And let's see if I I think I asked everybody. Yep. All right. Okay, so we give it a couple more seconds. And I am going to close the poll. All right, so it looks like 2/3 of you is already using the phone, and then 13% of you are not, and 26% not yet, but you're thinking about it. So that's very exciting. Great, awesome. Good, so Janice is going to talk about typical donor communications.
Exactly. Good afternoon, everyone, or morning, wherever you happen to be. Looking forward to having a conversation with you today. That's what we're here to talk about. These tend to be typical donor communications. I love the cartoon. Look, Daddy, what I made. Keep on talking. I'm listening. And in the other cartoon, the woman just wants to know what time it is, and the person answering the question gives her lots of information. So often we talk at our donors in our language about us in one-sided ways that aren't terribly interactive. But when we do talk with and listen to our donors. Those donors are going to feel more connected and valuable. They'll give more frequently. They give more. They tell their friends. We want them to tell their friends about the wonderful experience they have. They're not going to lapse away, and ultimately, they may leave us a legacy gift. So let's look at this interesting variation on the donor pyramid. It shows that our donor pyramid is actually more like this pond, where our Jeff Brooks says that and our donors are more like an organic thing that can grow and shrink and even die as time goes on. So we have our general donors, we have our major donors, our high value donors, and then there's that downflow, the lapsed donors who go away. So they come in, they bond, or they just flow right out of the stream, or they stay and grow and do some other things. So donors move around instead of just climbing upward as the pyramid showed us. So we also know that at the far end of the pond where that lapsed was is actually probably in reality much wider than depicted. Because what we know is, I love this quote, donor attrition, so those donors who leave us, those donors who lapse away, is really the equivalent of termites eating away at your home. I love this. Attrition is the termites eating away at our foundation without knowledge until one day our home collapses into a big sinkhole. The termites, it erodes our foundation and really keeps us from doing the good work that we're here to do. Then there's a sad reality that we know, on average, we lose about 7 out of 10 donors after their first donation. We all talk about this all the time. We know this, but yet it continues. And so let's talk about how much money we're leaving on the table. So as you know, if you think about the pond and the donors coming in and spending time in the pond and flowing out, how much money are you leaving on the table? Do you know how much money leaves with your lapsed donors every year? So let's give an example. Let's say you had 2,500 donors in 2018 with an average gift of $80. If 70% of those leave, you've lost about 1,700 donors and about $140,000. Huge. Think about what your organization could do with $140,000, or after a 5-year lifetime value of $700,000. Think of the impact you could make if you were able to retain those donors. Pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah, and I would actually just love to, like, you can type that in in your questions box. I would actually love to know if you are tracking on that. I mean, I know that the fundraising effectiveness project is there. It's a free resource. You can track what your donor retention rates are. But do you in your organizations, the listeners today, the attendees today, do you actually know how much money you indeed are leaving on the table? And the reason why that would be good to track on is because that will actually then help you identify how much of your resources you can put into trying to keep them, trying to bring them back, and considering even, like doing more phone calls, sending out more letters to bring them back. Because there's a couple of different ways that you can improve donor retention. The first thing is like really looking carefully at what are you sending out now? How many emails, how many mailings, how soon does your thank you letter go out? And then are you sending thank yous more often than asks, or are you always asking? And again, I mean, we all work with a lot of different organizations and they're really all over the map. So some organizations like only ask once a year, other organizations are asking like 18 times a year. And it's important that you have the time to thank them in between. But the key point that we want to make today is like really saying, how do we pick up the phone and talk with your donors? thank the donor some more, right? Just a thank you letter alone is not enough. Reactivate those lap donors. How can we bring them back? And we're going to share some case studies with you today. How do you grow monthly donors? That's obviously one of my preferred, like, favorite topics, right? Talking about monthly giving. And then how do you upgrade your donors, right? Just by simply picking up the phone. So here are just a couple of other things to look at when you're mapping out your communication strategies. Like, how often are you talking with your donors, not to? Are your communications donor centered, right? Do you talk about you more than me or we? Do you reach out to donors after events? A lot of organizations do a lot of events, but then they're on to the next event. They simply don't have a lot of time to reach out to them after those events. So do you offer your donors the opportunity to give feedback? Again, there's a huge trend right now that donors are willing to give feedback, and you want to give them the opportunity to do that. And what other ways are you offering your donors to give, so to help and engage with you? And again, do you thank and connect more than you ask?
Exactly. Great. So let's talk about thanking, connecting, and why gratitude is so important for in the giving process. Why the gratitude helps keep those donors in the pond instead of flowing out of the pond. We know that giving makes people feel good. Stuff happens in our brain associated with pleasure, social connection, and trust that creates this warm glow. And our organizations are responsible for keeping that warm glow alive in our donors. That thing that inspired them to give in the first place. How do we keep that warm glow alive? And I love this quote from Jay Love with Bloomerang. Making donors feel truly appreciated is what separates you from the average nonprofit. How your donors feel, how you make them feel, how engaged they are is going to make a huge difference. You need to review your thank you processes. So using all your direct response channels already in place to give a variety of thank you, gratitude messages out there. Review those processes. What are you using to express your gratitude? Use that, and then make sure that you say thank you often and with sincerity. I preach this first one. A thank you is more than a receipt. A receipt is not a thank you note. A receipt is for tax purposes. A thank you is a show of appreciation. So it's okay if you want to include them together, but then you need to do something separate that really is about thanking them and showing gratitude, keeping that warm glow going. We need to say thank you immediately after the first gift. Within the first 48 hours, say thank you and mean it. And then thank at least one more time before you ask them again. Be sincere about the donor's impact and be frequent. And we know that research tells us that donors who are truly and sincerely thanked are 50% more likely to pledge again the following year. If we thank them, they will return. So let me tell you a story. Let's move into our first case study, all about the thank you call. Would love to know how many of you do thank you calls following after gifts. This particular case study is about thank you calls following an event. We worked with a small community service organization to do thank you calls to their attendees of their benefit dinner, their annual benefit dinner. One of the wonderful things about modern technology is they were able to capture probably 99% of their attendees' phone numbers, cell phone numbers, through this app they use called ClickBid. It was wonderful. Events often lead to frustration well, we can't communicate with them because we don't have their information. This ClickBid and some of the other auction platforms are a wonderful source to capture the cell phone numbers and information about event attendees. So we took that information The organization did a thank you note to the event attendees within 36 hours after the event to say thank you, we truly appreciate it, tell us what you think. So they thanked them and they asked for feedback. And then we stepped in with them, partnered with them to do thank you calls. So we contacted 1 week to the day after the event, we called all the individuals to say thank you. And where we didn't reach a live person, we left a message. So here's what the scripting looked like for that. It was very simple. We can move to the next one. Thank you, Erica.
Mm-hmm.
So it said basically, thank you for participating. Your participation helps ensure students are matched with supporting and caring adult mentors. We shared the dollar results of the event and the impact. And the impact for them was, as a result of this, we were able to create new mentor matches. But there's more to do, which is their call to action. We need more mentors. And if you'd like to give a gift of support, and then another warm thank you and the call. And here's what the results were. So we had 121 names and cell phone numbers, which was about 95% of the guests, 95, 96, 7. Pretty high considering. We spoke to 42% of those individuals. So we actually had a conversation with them. Those cell phone numbers, having them are wonderful. Keep them, get them, keep them, treasure them. We left messages on 57% of those calls. Of all those numbers we have, we were only unable to leave messages on 6, which is pretty significant. Nobody hung up on us, hooray, and nobody didn't want to talk. We connected with 99% of their event attendees. That's powerful. That's excellent. The calls were positive and reaffirming. Yes, I want to be a mentor. I have a friend I want to get involved. What a wonderful event. Thank you for all you do. It was my pleasure to support. All the comments we received were powerful and amazing, and the organization couldn't have been happier with that. So good results when you take the time to make the calls. These were all just a one-dial call. It didn't take more than between 2 people, probably 3 hours. So let's talk about some thank you call results. So we know that when you thank, it increases the retention rate. It gives us an opportunity to move those small donors to mid-level and major levels. It improves that love story between us and the donors. Power of the thank you call. 95% of donors appreciate a thank you call within a day or 2 of their donation. And we know the reason why is because they're feeling good about that experience, about that event, about that gift. And so if we can contact with them as soon as possible, they're still feeling really good. And we reinforce that warm glow. 84% said they would probably definitely give a larger gift. The thank you calls are powerful. We need to make the time, and we need to call all of our donors, not just some of them. And just a few more thank you call. Even later, long after the gift or the event, there's still an increase in donor support. So thank you calls are the way to go when you can't get face to face. A wonderful quote here. If we make our customers feel good, Erica, you can move to the next one, please.
Yeah, I'm already there. Yep.
If we can make our customers feel good, good will come to our organization. And thank you calls are a wonderful way to do that. Okay, so how do we typically communicate with our donors? Typically, on the right-hand side, we mail them, we email them, maybe occasionally we'll send a message in a bottle. Occasionally, we'll talk to them, we'll sit across the table from them, we'll pick up the phone, we'll call them, we'll communicate with them. What we know is that the left, the calls, the talks, have a greater return on investment than do our direct mail and our email communication. It just works out that way. So who's your donor? Let's talk about, in order to know how to talk with our donors, we need to know who they are. So they're typically, mid-50s. They're comfortable with the telephone. They grew up with the telephone. Their telephones had cords, and they still, many of them use this as a primary source of communication. And often, as folks get older, they enjoy receiving calls because they don't have many people to talk to. So if you have an older population, they're going to love to get calls from you. So what should we know about our donors? So we know who they are, but what do we need to know? What should we find out from them during the conversation? This is so important in order to know how to communicate with them, how they want to give. We need to know what inspired their first gift, their 10th gift. And to do this, we need to ask them, what part of their mission do they like to support? How do they like to give? Online, mail, website, events, phone. How do they like to fulfill their gift? Check, credit card, EFT. And then how often do they want to be asked? And how often will they make their gift? Monthly, quarterly, annually. But the only way to find out most of this is to pick up the phone and call them. You've got to ask them directly these questions in order to get the information. So we've heard it all. Why we don't use the phone? So nobody uses the phone anymore. We don't have the time. It's too expensive, and we only call major donors, or it's intrusive. People don't want to be called, which is actually not so correct. Here's why we should use the phone for all of our donors. Using the phone, consider it an investment in your future. It's not an expense, it's an investment, because we know it costs us less to retain our donors than to bring new ones in. So it's an investment. It helps us enhance and reinforce other strategies. Some people just need a reminder. It's a great way to update donor demographic information. It's really sad when you call your donors and they say, well, my wife passed away 8 years ago. Well, gosh, we really should have known that 8 years ago. But if we're not talking to them, we tend to not know those things. We know that the phone gives us a better ROI than direct mail, events, etc. An improvement in the lifetime value of that donor and their contributions is significant. So let's share some more examples and then you can decide. We want you to pick up the phone and we want you to call all your donors to say thank you, we miss you, we need your feedback, welcome back. Consider a monthly recurring gift, upgrade your gift, update your credit card information, and calls to action like becoming a mentor or supporting an activity at the school or the organization. Lots of reasons and why. So let's do another poll, Erica.
Yeah. Okay, and I'm actually going to ask you a question while we're doing that. So the poll is, which donors are you calling? So if you are calling your donors, who are you calling? Is it just the major donors? Is it lapsed donors? Is it new donors, monthly donors, or other? And Elaine, hi Elaine, actually she asked a question says, is it appropriate to have the recipient of the gift, like a high school student in this particular case, make a thank you call, or should a thank you call always be done by the development team or board members? So Janice, maybe you can answer that question while people are filling out the poll.
Students do thank you calls fabulously. If you have an opportunity for the recipients to make that thank you call, it is always more personal when it comes from the person who receives the gift. We're the stewards of this all, but the power comes from at least with thank you calls. Students, sometimes asking for donations are good. Development people do it better. And we know why that is. So, but certainly use your students.
That's a great answer. And and Patricia asked another question, says, at the risk of using a broad brush, how do you convince millennials? Great question. That donors still use the phone when they believe that email, Instagram, and Twitter are much more effective. So how do you, I mean, you work with a lot of organizations, like what are some of those? I'm sure this question comes up a lot. So what do you recommend there? How do you, what do you
Well,
do?
you have to know who your donors are. You know, millennials, if you're talking to millennials may not want to talk on the phone. But if you're talking to your older donors, they're not so opposed to having those calls. So, you know, oftentimes you always have to look at who your donor pool is and respond to them in the way that they're going to respond back to you.
Yeah, yeah, great. And Betsy says the millennials are texters, and that's absolutely true. So, but there is ways that you can actually convert like a texter to say, is it okay to call you and have more of a conversation? Depends a little bit on what you want to ask them, but great, yeah, awesome. So it looks like pretty much everybody has filled out the poll. So I'm going to close it now. All right. So it looks like there are almost 40% of you. Are like calling major donors. Nobody calls lapsed donors. That's interesting. And 30%, almost 30% calls new donors. That's fantastic. 5% monthly donors, and then almost 30% is other, which may be a combination of these. So great. Well, thank you for filling out the poll. Because it is, you know, and again, like obviously the more we talk about the donors, the more engaging we are, the more important they will feel. And that's also another reason why we really recommend that you look at adding some thank you calls and some other calls and engagement ways during the year, because it makes the donor feel special. You stand out from the crowd. So, and again, the donors, if they feel like you're listening to them, it's going to make them really, really special. And again, that's the feeling that you want to give them. The other piece is we're going to move into lapsed donors now, is to acquire a new donor will cost you 10 times more in resources than keeping an existing donor. So Janice is going to do another great case study here on reactivating lapsed donors.
So for those who no one responded, no one is doing calls to lapsed donors, and I will tell you that that is a wonderful way to keep your donors in that pool. Reactivating when they're just lapsed, or even this particular case is taking us. It's a private college, and we contacted their lapsed donors. Lapsed up to about 36 months. 48, anything beyond that, they're almost like non-donors and you're starting from scratch, but not necessarily the case. So for this case, we called 2 segments. Lapsed donors who like to give by phone, so they've given by phone before and do so wonderfully, regularly. And then the second segment were lapsed donors who came onto the file through direct mail, events, and email. All of these folks were alumni, parents, grandparents, and friends, so they were part of the family of this college. The calls were made in the spring. If we didn't speak with somebody, we left 2 messages. The results were astonishing, as you can imagine. So those with the prior phone, so they've given by phone before, their average gift was $134. It cost 14 cents to raise $1, which is incredible. If you're looking at your return on investment, this was fabulous. There were 450 pledges that came from this, totaling $60,313 that they wouldn't have had if they hadn't made the call. The segment that had no prior phone, their cost to raise $1 was a little higher because they weren't used to getting those phone calls. But still, the average gift was $140, surprisingly higher than the other group, and they grossed about $20,547. So they raised $80,000 that the organization would not have received with direct mail alone. Calling lapsed donors will bring in additional revenue. What we also discover are these nuggets of gold that we call them. We uncover these all the time. In this particular, with this particular college, we uncovered a $100,000 bequest the school did not know about, but because of the conversation that we had with the donor on the phone, they shared information about their gift. Pretty awesome stuff. So we know that using the phone for those lapsed donors is fabulous. Using the telephone helps us, connects our donors to our organizations in a positive human-to-human experience so that they feel good and that they'll return and engage in greater ways more frequently. We also know that on the next slide, great information from a fundraising agency in the UK is that even when donors say not right now, we're improving the attrition rate. So when we speak to supporters on the phone, they tend to have a lower attrition rate than those who didn't receive the call. So you're going to improve your retention right out of the chute. And that includes even those donors who said not today. So we know that those calls are powerful.
That's great. So I actually got two more questions, so I figured we might as well address them because they also have to do with, well, one of them has to do with lapsed donors. So Alan says, is there a minimum amount of time that should be used before considering somebody lapsed? Is it like 1 year, 2 years? I mean, what do you typically find?
Well, I would look at you can do lots of reports now, and actually the fundraising fitness test is a wonderful tool to actually give you that information about your donors, but find out how often they give. If they're giving 2 or 3 times a year, probably if they stop giving after that first time and you don't get that second gift or even the third gift, by the third gift you ought to be on the phone reaching back out to them.
Mm-hmm. So you're thinking of but I mean, I think the other thing is like some organizations consider somebody lapsed if they haven't given like 2 years. That's typically what I see. Other organizations say, well, I don't consider somebody lapsed if they haven't given in 3 years. So, but 1 year is usually still considered active donors. So,
but we know that the longer they're lapsed, the harder it is to get them back. So the sooner that you recognize that lapse and reach out to them, the more likely you're going to get to pull them back bring them back into the fold.
Great. Yeah. And then Patricia asks, is there any research to reinforce the use of the phone by age group? And I don't know if I'm sure there is some, but I haven't seen it in recently, but we can do some research after.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've seen something, but I can't put my hand on it, in my head right now. But there is definitely, I saw something, I think, from Blackbaud recently. So let me see what I can find out, and we can consider that part of the follow-up. And I see there's a couple of more questions. Or actually comments here. So Betsy shares, she says, I sent a short letter to a 2-year lapsed donor asking to get together with them, and she got a check for $50,000 by return mail. So that's really nice, right? So I'm sure you thank that person right away, right? And then Ruth says, should we always leave a voicemail message if a donor doesn't answer your phone call? If yes, what should we say in the voice message?
Our scripting for the voicemail is very similar to, the message when we talk to a live person. We want to thank them for their past support, their current support, whatever the call is about. Voicemails are okay because You know, some people don't want to talk on the phone, but they're going to listen to their voicemail message, and they're going to hear if your message is powerful and sincere, it has the potential of having as much impact as if you talk to them directly.
Great. Okay, well, yeah, keep those questions coming. All right, so I'm going to move now into a case study that's actually like asking for monthly gifts. So why would you even ask for monthly gifts? Well, the reality is monthly giving has really grown, right? So, and monthly giving is another way to really create that loyal base of support, right? But it also helps you with that donor retention rate. It really, really improves your donor retention rate. I mean, the latest statistics are out, and it shows that the overall donor retention rate is still at about 45%. But if you can get somebody to become a monthly donor, that retention rate can go up to 90% or even higher. So how can you use the phone when it comes to monthly donors? Well, of course, you can call and say, welcome. Thank you so much for giving monthly. You can reach out if they're giving by credit card and their card expires, and I'm going to give you an example of that. You can reach out and say, we miss you. You were giving monthly before. Again, you can say thank you during the year, or you can even consider saying thank you if they made an additional gift, if they are a monthly donor, and then you can ask them to upgrade. So lots of ways to use the phone. What I love about the phone too is that testing is actually pretty easy. Of course, it depends a little bit on the total number of donors that you're calling. But here's an example of, because I know sometimes people struggle with that, like what should my monthly giving ask amount be? What should I ask for? And in this particular test, you see that they used to ask for $7 a month. And then they said, well, we really want to up that to see if we can get donors to start giving at $10 a month. Well, the reality is that the lower ask had a higher response rate. So, and they actually even got like, it got like almost 11% response with an average monthly gift of almost $8. So it wasn't just the $7 they got. They got some people to give $10 and $12 as well. But when they asked for $10, they only got a 7.8% response rate. They did get that $10 gift. So this was a very simple test that helped them establish to say, okay, well, no, if we want to bring in new monthly donors, we can upgrade them later, but right now we want to bring in as many new monthly donors as we can. So let's stick with the $7 ask for this particular test. The other thing is, this is another organization that tested looking at how recent they should go, which are the people who are most likely to become monthly donors. And the reality is the newer donors are more likely to become monthly donors than those donors who have been giving to you for a while. So when they isolated the 0 to 6 month donors, again, there's a small number of them, but they got 13% of people to say, yes, I'm going to give a monthly gift. Now, I do want to point out that this particular organization has 3 different ways to give monthly. They offer check reminders, they offer credit card, and they offer electronic funds transfer. So a lot of organizations don't offer check statements anymore. So if you are not offering check statements, you're probably looking at 5 to 7% response rate when you're asking your relatively new donors 0 to 6 month for a monthly gift. But again, you can do a lot of testing when it comes to the phone. And the neat thing about having somebody on the phone is that you can negotiate, right? So that's really, really powerful. Another case study I wanted to mention is, how do you prevent monthly donors from stopping to give monthly? What do you do? If you can identify those donors whose cards are about to expire, that's the right time to say, hey, I would like to reach out and find out if you can give us your updated credit card information. And Not everybody is able to do that, but if you're not able to do that, you can still call right away as soon as you find out that the donor's card expired and reach out to them. So let's look at an organization. Because a lot of organizations, especially if the monthly donor programs are relatively small, they do everything in-house, right? So this particular organization had in-house callers, but they got like pulled away for all different reasons. So they were not consistently calling every month as soon as the card expired for the monthly gift. So they hired this outside phone agency who was very comfortable with like manual dials, if you will. They were able, and manual dials are used and very powerful, especially when it comes to cell phone numbers. If you're working with a big telemarketing agency, they use what they call like predictive dialers. They are not allowed to use predictive dialers for cell phones. Manual dials, however, smaller agencies that can handle manual dials, they can call cell phones. So there's different rules about that, just something to be aware of. So this particular organization sent updates twice a month because they were trying to charge donors. Like they had a group of donors that were being charged on the 5th of the month, and then they had a group of donors who were being charged on the 15th of the month. So every time they got a file with those donors whose card did not get charged because it had expired or declined. So the agency was able to call what we call like the trouble on credit card donors in the evenings, on Saturdays, at different times when typically in-house callers are not doing so. So here is the results. On average, the organization was able to bring back 8% of their lapsed monthly donors by calling. But when they outsourced it, they were able to bring back 12% of their monthly donors. 50% more monthly donors were recaptured every month just by outsourcing it to a smaller agency who was able to call at different times. So the cost to raise $1 for that particular group was 39 cents. So again, you were able to recapture a lot of monthly donors. Now again, it's a small number. 21% of donors was being able to be recaptured, and they were able to keep almost $21,000 just after making calls, by outsourcing that particular call. So it's in a way it's not so much important if you outsource it or do it in-house, as long as you call your lapsed monthly donors right away. Even if people are texters, even if people like emails, it's that combination of mail, email, and phone that is going to keep as many monthly donors as possible. It's all about, when you talk, you're only repeating what you already know. But when you listen, you may learn something new. For example, what I find when we call like lapsed monthly donors, a lot of times we're able to, in some cases, somebody says, well, I just let it lapse because I really didn't want to continue anymore because I can't afford it. Well, when you have that conversation, you can say, well, would you consider a lower monthly gift? And donors are going to say, oh, geez, I never thought about that. I can absolutely do that, right? So having that conversation, even when you think, oh, I'm going to lose this monthly donor, you can do something about it. You can pick up the phone and try to get them back. All right, one more case study here. It's about upgrading monthly asks. The reality is, and again, I would love to know actually from you, this is not a poll, but it's a question, like if you have a monthly donor program and if you are asking for upgrades from your monthly gifts. Because the reality is, if you brought somebody in at $7 a month, yes, you would like to get them to give $9 or $10 a month, right? Right now, the industry average is $23 a month is what organizations are getting for their monthly gifts. So again, very, very powerful. But you can always ask for upgrades, right? So, but you can do it annually, once a year, maybe in January, maybe in September. Stay away from the heavy times that you're asking for one-time gifts. You want to close out the year. You want to get that gift from them once a year. But in January, you can say, well, everything has become more expensive. Can you upgrade with like just a couple more dollars, $2 or $3 a month, right? So what do we do when we use the upgrade ask on the phone? Well, we're always going to thank them. We're so grateful for what they're already doing. Then we're going to engage them. We're telling them about how their gifts are making a difference. And then we're going to say, well, but here's what we would like to do more of. Here's so many more children, animals that we would like to serve. And then you're going to ask for an upgrade. You thank them, and then you're going to close. So that's the outline of the call. So here's an example of what that looked like. Because of all of these things that were going on, all of these great programs that we're doing right now, I'm asking if you could upgrade your monthly gift by just $2 or $3 a month. Typically 1/3 of the amount that they're giving right now. So if they're giving $10, you might ask for $3 a month. If they're giving $24, you might ask for an upgrade of $8 a month. And then you're including the new monthly gift. So what are they actually upgrading to? So, and that's part of the script. So let's look at the results. Here are two different campaigns that we did for this Catholic organization. And you see like they got 26% of donors, monthly donors, to upgrade with an average of $5 a month. And then you saw like, so you see 26% and then 23%. It depends a little bit about like how recent they came in, but you see again the overall revenue, the annualized revenue is just very, very powerful, right? So what have we seen in all of these case studies? It's all about retention and long-term value, especially when it comes to monthly donors, but also with lapsed donors. If you can bring them back, you're increasing the long-term value from those donors, right? When it comes to monthly donors, I always recommend that you always annualize your results. So you're not bringing in $7 a month, you're bringing in, a lot more than that. But some organizations are actually starting to use 5-year values because that's typically how long a monthly donor will stay on, 5 to 7 years. But there's some organizations that have monthly donors that give like that are there for like more than 20 years. So again, very, very powerful. So with all of these campaigns, including the upgrade, you're getting extra gifts. Somebody might say, oh, I can't do an upgrade. I don't want to upgrade my monthly gift right now because I'm on a fixed income, but I can give you an extra $25, right? So typically, and I've been doing telemarketing for 26 plus years, one-time gifts from telephone fundraising campaigns will more than pay for it. And every gift that you make will improve retention. So we're going to do one more poll. What type of calls will you add to your communication mix? Are you thinking about adding thank you calls, lapsed donor calls, monthly donor calls, upgrade calls, or other? And I think, let's see, and while we're doing that, I have another question. Let's see, Becky says, what do we say to lapsed donors to re-engage them? So that's a little bit different from the earlier question about the voicemail message. Janice.
I think impact. If you know what inspired them in the first place, talk about what you're able to do, what you need to do, how their gift will make a difference. Lower tuition for the children going to the private school, more people being served, whatever your impact is. We need you to help us to make a greater impact.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Okay, so it looks like pretty much everybody voted, so I'm going to close it. All right. Okay. So it looks like 14% of you was thinking about adding thank you calls. Then 43% is adding laughs donor calls. Great. Then 20% monthly donor calls. Yep, very powerful. And then some upgrade calls, and then 10% other, which is probably a combination of these. Great. Okay. Good. So what's a good call frequency, Janice?
Call your donors two times a year for a gift. Follow up post, direct mail, email, give them a call at least one time a year to say thank you, more if necessary. They will love hearing from you, always. And then understand that not every phone call will end in a gift, but every phone call will foster a relationship. Update your information in your database. Spouses passing, graduations, deaths, new addresses, promotions, all that good information, bequests. Educate and inform. It's an opportunity for you to tell them all the awesome that's going on in your organization, to answer questions they may have, and make a friend for life for your organization. And you got to take the baby steps. Try a test. Start with some thank you calls. See the results. When my team makes thank you calls, it increases they get so happy. So do those thank you calls first and see how it improves your outlook. Then do your fundraising calls. Look at the results. Look at the results. Not just the dollars you raise, but also the data you collect and the goodwill that you've created. Add the telephone. You won't regret it. I promise. Talk to your donors. What have you got to lose? And we had to kind of round the corner with the emotional photographs, the children that we serve, the puppies, and then that elusive money tree. But talk with your donors. You have nothing to lose when you talk to them.
Yeah, so Betsy says it right. I mean, she says I'm giving 100% love to 100% of my donors. So that's really, really powerful. So I know we have a couple of more minutes we have about 5 more minutes to answer any questions. So so I'm gonna open that up for questions, and then we can also look back at some of the challenges that you had reached out with in the beginning. So Ruth says, when you were talking about how often to call donors, did you mean call twice per year to ask for a gift and at least one time per year to say thank you?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So here is typically what we encourage. So if they're direct mail, if they respond to direct mail, if you use, most organizations do vibrant direct mail campaigns a couple times a year, the spring and the year end. If you do emails, it's always good to follow up that call after you've sent some communication with them. You've kicked off the campaign, you've done whatever, they know it's happening, and then you come in because not everybody is going to respond. The response rate to direct mail is pretty low most of the time, and so come in after those appeals and get those folks who haven't yet given a gift of support.
Yeah, I mean, I usually use one, it triples the response is my experience.
Yep.
Yeah. So, okay, so jumping back to is Sarah says, I want to make time to talk to my donors. I think I should do it every day, but I don't always. So do you have like a guideline as to how many calls people might be able to make in, say, like an hour?
Well, thank you calls, you can do quite a few unless you get some real talkative people on the phone. But you should be able to get, in 60 minutes, 30 calls done, maybe more, maybe less, depending on the conversation that you're having or what you're what besides the thank you is part of that. So if it's a thank you and feedback, a thank you and an impact report, and then a call to action, it all really depends on, but, set aside some time, block the time off on your calendar. All of the best time management people tell you that the way to get more time is to block it off on your calendar. Put the little sign on your door, do not disturb, making donor calls, and just do it.
Yeah. So one of the Eileen says comments, like she says, I found that when a student asks a potential giver for advice about college, future careers, etc., that's a great question. Good things happen. People love to give advice, and
Amen.
there's that old adage. I think they call it, like, if you ask for advice, you get money. If you ask for money, you get advice. So that's very, very true. And then Renee says, would it be appropriate to call and ask for permission to send a donor survey? What do you think, Janice?
We often do it the other way. So we will call them and we will say, and we've done this numerous times with different types of things, but keep an eye on your mailbox. We're sending this survey out because it's important that we find out X, Y, and Z, and we'd appreciate when it arrives that you would take the time to complete it. We don't necessarily ask permission. Now, if we talk to someone and they say we don't want it, then we definitely will note that and note that they don't want the survey. But certainly to alert them to the fact that it's coming. We've done calls, corporate calls, alerting I think it was some medical professionals that some communication was coming about a very important appeal that was happening with this association, and that they should really be on the lookout for that so that they could support. And the results from that were phenomenal because they knew it was coming.
Yeah, that's great. So Betsy says, I have 300 donors. I've reached out to the top 40 with personal emails and letters. I just sent a newsletter to everybody with a personal note. That's great. Should my first ask be a direct mail one-time gift campaign, or should I go right for a recurring gift? So the answer, Betsy, is like, it depends on what level your donors are giving. And I would look at getting a one-time gift first, and then doing a recurring gift ask in a follow-up. And then the other piece is, like, if you know that a donor has given a credit card gift, then they're more likely and more comfortable to convert to become a monthly donor. So that might be a good target group out of your 300 donors. But the other piece is, monthly donors are typically smaller donors. So look at if they give you $250 or less, that's a good question. And then you also asked, like, good questions for donor survey. What I recommend is you email us, or or we can email you. And there's lots of studies and research now on donor survey questions. So that's we don't have enough time to address all of that, but those are great questions. Again, donors will love answering survey questions. So I think that's it for us. Like I said, thank you for attending today, and you will get the recording, you will get the slides, and some other handouts. And absolutely feel free to reach out to Janice or I if you have any questions, because again, talk to your donors. What do you have to lose? If you talk to them today, you will absolutely raise more money tomorrow. So thank you.
Thank you.